Thanks. Well, one person should be okay. Okay. All right. Yes. So there will be a take home. By the way, the first memo to answer your question in the chat, there will be an activity that will be given towards the end of the end of the lecture, but you can complete it. I mean, it's not kind of time bound, essentially, because the first a couple of memos will not make it time bound. Slowly we'll move towards time based ones. Yeah. Rajiv. All right, so this is where we were. We were talking about form perception using the case study of this gold disk that was sent by NASA for hopefully aliens. Wherever they are, we don't know, but it's just sent out to outer space essentially. And there in that disk, we were talking about different kinds of forms that were represented for the aliens to perceive, which means that we made the assumption that the aliens are able to perceive certain forms that we will etch on this gold plate, which tells a lot about ourselves, and it also tells a lot about what kinds of assumptions we make around perception, even for aliens. This is where our discussion stopped in the last class, and we also saw this picture, which is one example from the Voyager's gold disk, and you were trying to explain how this visual communicates, at least to us, what this is. So how do we make out meaning from something of this sort? And this is the one that was remaining. So here, this is another example which from the disk, and the question is the same. What are the kinds of assumptions that we are making about ourselves and also about other aliens? I mean, do you think that most people on Earth is going to understand the same meaning of this visual representation or this visual representation, or there could be differences, which means that it's not a unanimous understanding or perception across all people, even on Earth? And the second more difficult thing is, how much are we assuming about perception of aliens when we are communicating things like these two slides that you see on the screen to outer space? Some quick thoughts, and then I'll try to get into what is the psychological mechanisms behind perceiving these things, which are called forms. So these are forms. This is a form, this is a form, this is a form, FORM, form. Similarly, these are all different forms. And we're understanding it because of certain kinds of perceptual abilities that we have, which psychologists have understood very well by now. And we have to understand some of these aspects, but you can intuitively tell me whether this is something that most people on Earth will be able to understand similarly, and what's the assumptions what we are making about alien perception when we are communicating things like this to outer space. These two related questions. If you all have to speak, please go ahead and raise your hand, and somebody will schedule it. If there are no hands after a while, that also let me know, then I will proceed, so that we don't waste time sitting around it.
Akash, you can continue.
Yes, sir. So the first picture, one can perceive human figures in it, and which are over different age groups and different gender. The smaller picture where 4 years is written, it's his age, and it depicts of a boy figure, and the 80 years is an old man sitting in a sitting posture, as he might be weak to stand, physically weak. Then the standing seems of a lady wearing a gown that is 30 years old, and her weight is shown there. And then a girl is sitting on the ground with that is 12-year-old. This I can perceive.
Yeah, you perceived a whole lot. Um, Anybody who wants to counter Akash? You can't perceive what Akash said, or everybody perceives the same thing here. Of course, you can also think about not just what you perceive. The question was, would all people or most people on Earth perceive it similarly? So also start thinking about how different people from different communities or countries or backgrounds might perceive the same picture. If you, I mean, this goes back to this, sorry, this thing I said about perception in
Sir,
general.
sir,
Yes.
sir, in this picture, perception for different culture might be different because the girl who is standing with the gown, her haircut might be similar to a particular culture because she's having a boy cut haircut. So it is in particular culture of the world, like Western culture, and in Indian culture, she might be perceived as a human male figure due to her haircut. That might be one cause.
Mhm. Okay.
Um, uh,
Um,
but
yeah.
but I guess the gender is not much clear from the picture as depicted, because as we know that the in like in tribal areas, skirts are even worn by men. So we cannot just gender. We cannot like specifically tell what is the gender of is the 12-year-old person sitting a girl or a boy, or standing one is a girl or a boy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the point that Akash made was should not be gender biased, I guess.
So please remember the previous activity that we did about those holes to understand what they represent, you know, that archaeological dig. And when I said that, please remember that we did talk about sensation. So perception has, of course, a sensory component to it, and that's the predominant component because that's the part that we'll focus on today. In fact, how do we even perceive this as a human? Of course, Akash says that, well, this is a female, or a girl here, and sorry, I don't know your name who just spoke. It said that, well, you can't really make out the gender so well, but both of you agree that this is a human. So we have to also explain how we are perceiving this black patch to be a human, which is what is the essence of form perception or perceiving forms, right? So that's what we will do today. But yes, so please remember that previous exercise, that perception is about the sensory processes that we want to take a look at, but also heavily driven by previous memory, stereotypes, and we saw our prejudice, or even learning, and many other possible confounds, or not confounds technically, but different other kinds of knowledge that can feed into the perceptual process as you do it. There are other interesting stuff about it. Yeah, so point taken. Thanks. Anything else around this that anybody wants to say about the form? And then we go to the numbers here. We also can pick out what do these numbers mean for everybody. Remember, I mean, this is for aliens, right? So if you do a study on this about understanding across Earth, we should not, or you would hope that there will be little differences. But is that so? Is what, it tells us a lot about how our perception works. Forget aliens. Yeah. Yes. So who else wants to add something to our conversation right now?
Yes, sir. Sir, it would also be that that we are focusing on the black part, and how do we know that we should be looking at something that's related to the black? Maybe the white region was something that was supposed to be depicted here. How do we know it's the black region?
Absolutely. But nobody did it. right? So there is something unique and something consistent, not affected by culture, context, religion, previous memory, stereotype, nothing. Almost a large percentage of people across the world is going to talk about the black patch. But yes, you are right. Why is it so obvious? The black is the form and the white is not the form. That we have to explain. That is what general psychology should be about. And it should be scientifically detectable, scientifically replicable. If I do it only in IIT Delhi, it's useless. If I do it in 100 other places and everybody sees form in the black one and not the white one, then I can trust that data. And then I have to have an explanation about it, and hopefully even a theory about it. Yes, this is actually the first most obviously weird thing about how our perception works. Why does everybody attend to the black?
Like,
Any intuitive thoughts about it?
yeah, actually, I think the black part is more profound. Like it, and we are focusing on black part mostly because we can relate them as human figures. If we could have anything or any object that could have been relatable to the white part or the white background, we might have focused on that. So I think we focus first on what we actually know. Yeah.
This is a very good point. And hence the form is not out there. The form actually is constructed. And this is heavily driven by who is constructing the form. This is where, and that who I don't mean subjectivity, that who means humans. So almost all humans, unless there is something wrong, most humans, not all, most humans are going to see human-like forms in this without any too much of disparity about it. Of course, we can disagree about the intricacies about age and gender and stereotype and standing and sitting, but probably these are humans, or at least human form. It could also be a statue, by the way. It's not necessarily a human. What makes it a human is something else in the picture. Can you pick that out?
They are the numbers and the weight. The
Absolutely.
age.
Yes, exactly.
Age and weight.
And weight, yeah. But then that's the first intuitive idea of the same form becomes human-like if you have additional attributes associated to it. If you don't, still the first form will be, the first intuitive idea will be that it's a human, not a statue. The second interesting thing is you can actually also contend that statues also could have weights and time associated with it based on how old it is. Right? It gets a little harder when you think about it, but obviously it's not the first answer that typically people will give. Most people say, well, you see humans here, and hence we have to say why the first short answer is generally humans, and hence through this we understand how we make sense of form. And what we are doing, and this is the long haul, we are assuming the same kinds of visual, perceptual, cognitive processes is going to be implemented or possibly implementable in an alien. Okay, this is the third one and the last one actually. What does this say? And what does this say in general, the meaning, and what does this say about our form perception?
Sir, it is, I guess, the landmass of Earth long time back, and then due to some geographical and climatic changes reason, it split up into number of continents, and after many years, it again split up to get into the shape it is today, into
Right.
number of continents.
And when is what is today? Which one is today's shape?
So the last one,
Second one.
The, mo- the
There
middle
is something in
one.
the
oh
picture that is
yeah,
supposed to tell you.
the ears, yeah, mid one.
So the hand that is showing there, it is saying that I am
It
here.
is saying
So
that
see how,
human evolution. Human are staying here.
Sir, and that was future one, right? The last one.
yeah, that comes from a lot of geomodeling work to predict how probably continents will drift apart again. And they will, obviously, if the Earth exists. So that's fine. But yeah, so see how complex this is. To be able to make sense of ourselves, we have to understand what's the meaning of the hand here. This is a hand, nobody disagrees. Most people see hand here, although of course, if you start philosophizing about it, you can say that this could or could not be a hand. This could also be something else that looks like a hand. It can be a tree, it can be a vase, it can be whatever. But the most obvious is what we have to explain. Why intuitively this looks like a hand? Why this form of black patch looks like a hand? Why this forms of black patch looks like different continents and not something else? Why is it Earth and not the globe? As a toy globe, for example. So these are the major questions that have made people busy trying to understand form perception, and for multiple reasons. For one reason, it is at the core of understanding how we, how we make sense of the world, because a lot of the stuff that we see are actually in different forms. And many a times, the black and white are a great way to check it, because that is where you have no other stimuli really. You have to figure out what's the form and what's the not a form. No, the black standing out over the white, which is technically called, the black is the figure and the white is the ground. It's called figure ground segregation in visual perception. You also have to understand that if this is how humans understand it, can I model it? And yes, now we have a lot of computer models or in AI which are able to model visual form perception. So computer is going to be able to say from this figure, annotate it semantically and say, well, it seems that there are humans in it. Ideally, we would also want to measure or how many humans in it, and the computer should be say, well, there are 4 humans in it. Exactly the same thing that you would be able to do, the computer should be able to do. It's hard. In fact, many people have tried to do it, and this also has a big applied side to it, because you might just want to take a photo of a crowd and upload it on the server. The server analyzes the photo and said, okay, it seems that there are about 10,000 people here. So I have to understand which is people through the form. I have to also make an estimate of the number of people. If it is 5, the computer says, well, it seems there are 5 people here, right? So, but to be able to do it, we have to understand how we do it. Well, not to be able to do it. On one side, you can be interested in how we do it. On the other side, you could be interested in how the computers are able to do it, or should we make them implement do it. You could also be interested in trying to model how we do it in the same way, implement it in a computer, or similar way, implement it in a computer, which is the field of AI. So for multiple of these reasons, a lot of work has happened in vision, including form perception and visual form perception. There's another practical side to it, and comes from this ad. Um, this is a marketing ad, and obviously you see that on the screen itself. But what do you see, and why do you see what you see, is the question to lead us to today's lecture.
Sir, it's actually zebra crossing, which has been drawn in the shape of McDonald's bucket with French fries in it. So it's a kind of advertisement scheme in which when people just walk over it, they see over what they are walking, and it actually makes them tempts them to actually have that particular stuff.
Yeah, but
Um,
this is not really drawn on the road. This is This is a graphic that is part of the packaging of McDonald's. Yeah, the other part that you said is right. I just wanted to make it clear that this is not technically the zebra crossing. So it's not a cartoonized zebra crossing. This picture was printed on the packages of McDonald's
So,
as a marketing campaign.
so it can be for like to influence them that whenever it looks like a zebra crossing, that so that maybe whenever they are crossing, whenever they are near a zebra crossing, they might remember that they saw this and might want to eat this particular beverage, French fries.
Okay, so what makes it look like a zebra crossing? Why do we get the form perception of a zebra crossing?
Because people are walking on it,
And
like
it's
they
also
are
like,
shown as if they're walking on the,
and it's
and the
Yeah,
also
no,
zebra crossing has
street.
yellow line strips.
yeah. So think in terms of an algorithm. What are the kinds of things that your brain needs to do to interpret this picture? Because this is a form, right? This is actual form perception in action through an advertising campaign. The psychological question is why and how are we able to make sense of this overall graphic that we see as one single form? There are multiple forms in it which has to be aggregated, and there are multiple other stuff that we are doing, including color perception and form perception, and maybe also this aspect of 2D to 3D uh, sense of it. So what are the key things that you can talk about that helps us see? When I say help us see, I mean, how are our brains able to say, well, this looks like a zebra crossing? Because there's no zebra crossing here.
And sir, I would like to add about the color perception, what you told about. Like this ad is saying that everyone is welcome here and nobody is being segregated by the color. Like the woman is shown in the white color and the men in the like brown. So there is no differentiating between the colored people or.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No,
This made this
yes.
made the
I'm
ad.
meeting up new peoples.
Sorry, what was that?
So kind of if we it is from the picture I'm perceiving, like if you go to McDonald's, like uh, people kind of meet up things, uh, like from the left side the white girl is coming, and from the right side like the black boy is coming. So it's kind of a meet up things which I can perceive from the given picture.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of social messaging
Yeah.
that's involved here. But when I talked about
Uh,
color, I simply meant this is yellow, this is green, or this is red, this is yellow. From here, how are we
yes.
able to read M on a red background?
So I would like to add something about perception,
Mm-hmm.
what I perceived. So I think this ad could have been thought of like that. Like as we are perceiving that this is a zebra crossing, people are crossing on the way. And as we can see that, I think the ad wanted to convey us that you can have this McDonald's French fries even when you are walking, like even when you are having a walk, or even if you are like it's like a free time. It's a snack that you can carry everywhere, something like that. I think
Okay.
that may be the message.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
So right, it looked
when
like, yeah, it looked
yeah.
like the zebra crossing, and it is shown just like we have seen the diagram. We have seen the advertisement on the playgrounds of the cricket matches, just like
Right.
MACD and on so on. And
Mm-hmm.
it is the only the marketing strategy, or maybe there nearby station there may be a MACD outlet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so every time you see these kinds of representations, visual representations when you're watching a match. It's there in cricket, in tennis, a lot. Realize that you are doing form perception. And we have to explain how our brains are able to perceive them. Of course, these are extensively used as marketing strategies. In our, when I used to teach MBA classes, then the same example has been used to teach about marketing and different kinds of marketing things that you are talking about. You can also talk about social change, social transformation, social messaging, again, as one form of marketing, which is where skin color could potentially be used. But today's class will restrict to the visual side of it, which is how are we able to say this is M because this M is in yellow where on a red background. If this would have been yellow and this have been yellow, you won't be able to say it. So this is another example of figure ground perception. M becomes the figure, which stands out on the background, which is the red package. Similarly here, blue is the background. The yellow on the blue stands out as the figure, which is why it tells you or it gives you a sense of a sensation which is hitting your eyes because the frequencies of this is different. This is radiating a different frequency. This is a different frequency because of the colors of acid with that. And this is automatically becoming the figure, which is why you are able to say that this is either a zebra or a French fry. Otherwise, you won't be able to say it. So the act of this is the figure ground segregation. This is the ground, all this, and these are the figures. Similarly here, this was the ground, this thing was the figure. In within that, this is the ground, the red one, and the M is the figure. Just like our black stood out on the white, the yellow stands out on the red, or the yellow stands on the blue. The next step that we have to do is, how are we able to even say this is M? Or how are we able to say this is a person or this is a person? This is from where we'll take on from today. Any quick questions here at this stage? No? Okay, great. So let me move to the next step. So there are different ways people have talked about it. One is to say, well, our perception is constructive. So we construct. What do we construct? This theory says we form and test hypotheses about percepts based on what we sense and what we have in memory. This part I've already talked about in the previous lecture.
Nishant, please.
Nishant,
Yes.
please mute yourself.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so one way to think about it is that perception is constructive, which means that we form and test hypotheses. I already discussed this, and you'll also probably had in your practical session, tutorial session, that there's a lot of this which is based on our memory. So first, we sense, and second, we have memory. Both put together, we first form a hypothesis. Okay, this is probably how or what this thing is. And then we go about testing it. So essentially, this is more like a top-down view of sensory processing. We first hypothesize maybe this is a human. And then we find different evidences to support the hypothesis that this looks like a human, or this looks like a zebra crossing, or this looks like a French fry. So that's the hypothesis that I form, and then I go about testing it. This is called constructive perception. Essentially saying that there is this unconscious inference that we are drawing the solution, or we are drawing the inference that this is this, or this is a human. And how do we do it? We first hypothesize this is a human, and then we try to find experimental evidence around that from the picture, let's say, to say, well, this is probably a human face or a human. So let's see the other way people do things. So this is from IIT Delhi when Mark Zuckerberg was here. The question is, can you find a friend in this photo? No. What is happening when you are seeing this photo? What are you perceiving and why? Now that you are starting to think in terms of, not in commonsensical terms. Say, well, this is the form, this is the color, this is how the perceptual system might be operating, this is what I am hypothesizing, and this is what my perceptual system is going and checking. Okay, let's change the terminology or the way we talk about perception by using more scientific terms. Who wants to try? There is no consequence, of course, so feel free to try. No problem. Everybody else can also chip in and, add their stuff to it.
Sir,
Sir,
Yes, one after another, please.
like I am able to perceive that there are two levels of this auditorium, because there's a separating wall colored brown colored, and which is similar to the one on which Mark Zuckerberg is standing. So because of their similarity, I'm able to see that this is the platform, which is the second level of the auditorium. And there are
So is that a form perception? Are you perceiving that? I mean, would you call that as a form that you're perceiving?
So it is like a color perception, because they are
Color.
of same color. So
Yes, that's right. But also, please note that you're perceiving this whole thing out here, which is the gallery.
yes,
Right. So this is also a form. This is a geometrical form or an architectural form, which is in 3D. Of course, the picture is in 2D. But even in 2D, the whole essence of why you think they are different, one is, of course, color. Second is depth. Third is also that there's some kind of continuity, because this whole thing looks like one single story, which is one story above from the ground. So if this is ground, this is first floor, but this, what makes it first floor is the depth, but also a continuity of the railing, or the continuity of this, this patch of brown that you see. Right? So both are happening, the color and the form together being perceived. Yes, go ahead, please.
and then I can see some of the security, because they are dressed in black, and also that we can see their hands stretched. They are trying to keep the crowd a bit away from them. And I can also see a faculty member, because you can see that he's closer to the stage, and the security is not trying to keep him back. So we may perceive that the people who are not who are closer to the stage, they might be the organizers of this event.
Okay. Well, you told a lot about very higher level information in this picture. Imagine now I feed this picture into a computer. Okay, and you want that computer to say, or let's say to estimate the number of people that are there. We can also do the same task. A computer can also do the same task. I mean, you will not be 100% right, but you can still do some kind of estimation. What are the key aspects that has to be picked up from the photo to be able to do that stuff, to that task?
sir, to do that task, I will divide the picture in a grid-like structure with in which I will count the number density or approximate the number density into a particular cell of the grid, and I will then try to count the number of cells that are in a particular row and multiply them with the number density that I have created. The
How will you
people
create the
that
number
are,
density?
so suppose I created a unit cell at towards the first level of the picture. There the number, because as they are I am able to perceive them that they are at a distance from stage, so there will be a higher density. So I will have to, as soon as I move towards the front stage of the picture, the number density will be decreasing. So I will divide it into rows, and for each row, I will take a certain cell at the corner, calculate the number of cells in that particular row, multiply with that number, and in this way I will proceed. So I will be able to get an approximation how many people are there.
All right, but you still didn't answer how will you. This is a very smart way of thinking, I must say. But you still have not answered how will you get the number density, or what are the processes that's involved or required, just at least at the
So
abstract
that
level.
for
Sir,
that I
because
will look for the difference in their costume colors, and because suppose I am looking for the first level of the floor, there I can see different colors standing together, one against the other. So I am able to perceive them as a human figure. The different colors are seeming to seem to have a human figure, and or I will count the heads that I am able to perceive through the picture.
Okay.
Sir,
Yeah,
and one
somebody
more
else
thing
will
I would
say.
like to add from this picture, sir, that I'm
Mhm.
perceiving that Mark Zuckerberg is wearing outfit that is suitable for the student. Like student are wearing a t-shirt, jeans, and he's also wearing a simple t-shirt and a jeans, nothing fancy. So he's able to communicate more with the students, and the students will student will be concentrating on what he's saying. Like they will feel that, or he's he's like me, and so.
Mhm. Yeah, probably. Well, every time I've heard him speak, he wears the similar stuff apart from court. So, yeah, but that might be right. But it doesn't really talk about form perception as far as today's topic is concerned. But that's more
Sir,
of a social thing.
sir,
So
Yeah.
we can try to do a head count.
I
How?
want to ask that why the Mark Zuckerberg is sitting opposite to
Hmm.
the faces of the audience or the public.
For taking a picture.
Taking a picture.
I would also think so. Hopefully, unless there's some magic uh, thing happening. But yeah, let's. I mean, I think there's a slightly different aspect that I want to focus on. So here you see that, you know, the same task, which is understanding patterns in faces. I'm trying to link it to form perception, guys. So please don't get into the social side of things. So, don't start saying, well, who has a better, or they have the same hairstyle stuff. So that's fine. I mean, or the clothing and all. Think about form. So if we are, and think from a computer side, so, or a computational angle. So if this is the form, I want to make a decision that they are the same face. Okay. So this is another example of form perception, that face is a form, and here it's in a 2D picture, and I'm seeing two different pictures technically, but I have to judge the face to be same, which is the correct answer. Whereas here, this is a more difficult one, where again, this is the same face, but it's difficult because of, multiple other aspects about the face, right? Uh, the question that I want to pose is, when you are doing, form perception of the face, and the judgment is to figure out, or the task is to figure out whether it's the same face or not. You can do it, you can ask your friends to do it, you can also have a software to do it. In fact, the whole area of facial recognition, that is also part of national security nowadays, is dependent on figuring out that it's the same face even after a different characteristics of the face is changed by the person. So my question to you is, how are we able to figure out that this is the same face? As simple as that. This is
So
that's the judgment we have to get to. And obviously, the next thing which I will not do in today's class, or I will not do it at all, is a computational question of how will you program it in a computer.
So we will
Let's just talk
compare
about the
their
human. Sorry.
eyes and the ears and nose, because eyes don't change from for one person, and the nose shape will also remain the same, and also the ears.
Yeah. So are you saying
And
that this is how we would program a computer, or are you saying this is how we do it?
so both, like
Both. Okay.
the eyes shape and the color, the face shape, and nose shape, all these features.
So, but first step should be to uh, see the outer structure of the whole. We first compare the face as a whole. That is it oval in shape or circular in shape without considering the inner features. That should be the first step. Because it will be easier to eliminate at the first step if the overall structure of the face is different. Then we will move to the inner details to compare the differences between the eyes of the two faces or the nose of the two faces.
Okay. Um,
Sir,
so
if we have to just compare same face in different emotions, we just try to make them similar and to the most at most we can do, so that in that state we it's easier to compare that is they are same or different.
So like
yeah.
also we can like if we have to compare the two faces, one have beard and one has not, so we can like either we can give both to the beard or either we can remove the beard from both the faces. So like we can compare the faces.
You mean computationally?
Yes, sir. Like also like in the highest computation.
Because you can't go and remove the beard, right, when you're seeing somebody. All right. So does this theory then explain facial form perception? You're first forming a hypothesis and testing it based on what you're sensing, which is the face, and what you have in memory. So does that explain how we conclude that this is the same Well, first of all, do you think this is a difficult task, that this first quadrant and the third quadrant is the same person? If we do a like memory task, most people will be able to say that you have seen him before.
So for us, it is very simple because our brain always go for similarities, like how much similarities are there. It can first see this, but for a computer program, it will go difficult then.
uh, it's not too simple for us, because you see there's a lot of literature which says that people have very bad memory of faces. In fact, that is why eyewitness testimony, which is to remember from your memory whether you saw this person committing a crime or saw this person driving badly or whatever, is now not taken. I mean, now it's taken with a lot of salt, because we do have a very bad memory, especially if characteristics of the face changes, like in this case. So it seems that there is certain things that we gather for the face overall, which makes the thing difficult. If you say that we only look at the eyes, or the outer rim and all, that remains constant, right? Which means that we should not have found it too difficult if people changed certain properties of the face. Even makeup, for example, allows you um, to skip the memory of those who is seeing somebody. That is how many people run away or um, skip the law just by putting on makeup. So clearly we don't look at only the structural features of the face. But the computer does it, because a computer's task is to figure out that if these two faces are similar. And one way you all rightly pointed out is to look at the overall structure, You would have basically put multiple points in your software and look at the differences from the eyebrow to the hair, or from the nose, or nose from the lips. And if you have a total topography of the face and these two topographics match, then you think, well, this is the same face. That's what the image matching algorithms do, including the ones used by the police and the security to be able to catch such offenders, which the human mind is not able to do. That is why we need the software support to do it. So we don't perceive the form in separate parts. We perceive the form overall, which makes perceiving this face and this face indeed difficult for humans, not easy. But if the aberrations are not too much, as in this case, there's not too much of change, then we are able to handle that amount of noise and figure out, well, this is not the same, but it looks so similar that it's probably the same face. But if the aberrations are too much or too different, then we flunk. But a computer doesn't, because a computer is only going to look at the structural features of the face. If we would also be doing that, then we wouldn't have failed in this thing, and we would not need security and police people to have the algorithms to do it. So first lesson, we perceive form overall. Well, the first lesson is we first form hypotheses and test them. So our hypothesis is this is the same face. Oh yeah, this is the same face. Here our hypothesis is, oh, this is a different face. And the conclusion is, well, this is a different face. But if you hypothesize that this is a different face, but then you conclude, no, this is probably the same person, then still you are essentially doing constructive perception, because you are forming a hypothesis and then testing it out. Is this part clear? That's point one. Point two, this is a different approach or different thing that has been suggested in the literature, which is called direct perception, which means that the stimuli is all that is. So, whatever is out there essentially is what gives you the eventual perception. You don't have to perceive or interpret or use memory and all that. It happens right there. And the way it happens is we use visual cues like relative size and depth and stuff about the perceptual stimuli in the stimuli itself, without recreating these hypotheses and testing them and all, as the first theory says. So constructive perception is pretty much opposite to direct perception. And what's the evidence for direct perception? Well, it comes from fighter pilots. So this is a fantastic study that was done during World War II. And the funny part is, this is the same thing that we are doing even now. Most countries, including the Indian Air Force, has these kinds of batteries, test batteries as they're called, where you would do some kinds of depth perception, visual perception tasks on a computer before you're allowed to go and fly the flight. They also take some kinds of visual perception tasks as tests before giving out licenses for multi-city driving or truck driving. But here is what Gibson found. Those who performed well on the computer tasks on depth perception actually did not fly planes any better. So you can't predict on-job performance about flying the fighter jets based on how well or bad they do on the depth perception tasks on the computer. So there's something going wrong here, right? If I cannot predict performance, then whatever I'm measuring is not my best measure. Why is that not a best measure? Gibson said, well, when people are flying a flight, they are getting all the depth information while they're flying in the cockpit. So it's not like you generate a theory about the world or a hypothesis about the world, and then you go and test it out. No, the world itself is coming to you as a direct perception, and you're interacting with the world directly. There is nothing in between you and the world. So this is more like a bottom-up view, where bottom-up means the world is at the bottom. That is directly being perceived, and you're acting based on that. And that is happening while you're driving. Well, anytime you drive, please don't think about it when you drive and get distracted. But I'm just telling you that driving is another great example where you're acting at the moment based on the stimuli that's coming and hitting you. There is no scope, no time, and no necessity of creating these kinds of constructions about the world. All right. Then there is another great example that I want to talk to you about, which is about subjective perception. So, some people have said that perception is subjective, but here subjective perception is of a different nature, which is to say, well, there's something called illusory contours. Why illusory? What do you see here in this picture? This is a very
Panda.
classic panda. Anybody who does not see a panda? No, but there is no panda.
Some lines are missing. The outline of the panda are missing, but still we are able to see them.
Yeah. The outline of the panda is missing. Again, we are going back to our black and white figure, which was sent to outer space, remember? This is the same thing that is not sent to outer space yet, but this is something which becomes a logo that everybody, most people know about, which uses the same concept. Number one, there are these black patches, which is the figure. The white is the ground. Figure, ground, segregation. To make us understand the form. Second, there are certain properties, certain places where the black has been filled in, which makes it look like a panda. Third, most importantly and most weirdly, they have not finished the figure. So illusory, because this is an illusion of here being a line or a contour, but there is none. This actually is the white that has filled in this whole space. But still, we seem to attribute a contour here and a contour here, which is illusory because it's not there. Now we have to explain this. How are we able to see a panda when its figure itself is not complete, when it's basically block of, black stuff in there, and even there is no lines that separate out the black from the white, which is what at least was there in the gold plate. So how do you think we are able to do this illusory contour perception to give us the idea of this, the form of panda? Any ideas?
I guess we, at the first instance, we focus more on the overall picture and then we go into the details. So that's why we don't notice the details of the lines missing in the first glance. That's why we think that it is a panda without even noticing that lines are missing.
All right, wonderful point. So if we are looking at the overall picture, then why are we filling or how are we filling in the lines? You can look at the overall picture, but will that necessitate you to fill up the lines?
Sir, the presence
Yes.
of at
Yes.
the first glance, the presence of that these black patches, they seem to be placed in a specific pattern that we can recognize from our previous knowledge that they resemble a face, and these patches seem as we perceive them as ears, there is as eyes, and so we know that from our previous knowledge that this resembles that of an animal. Then we due to the color contrast between black and white, we perceive that it should be a black and white animal, and we try to recollect which all black and white animals we are familiar with. One might be a zebra, one might be a panda. Then these bigger black patches are perceived as legs of the panda. Since all these information together, uh, they tend to create the true sense of a panda is being here. So we finally conclude that although the outer lines of the body are missing, but overall it is giving us a perception that a panda is here.
Okay. This is also true many a times when a figure is hidden. You can't see the contours of the overall figure because there's something that occludes it. Say, for example, you stop it like this. I mean, from here, you, let's say, add something like this, still it doesn't stop us from figuring out this is a panda. Now for how long? Still a panda. Does it stop being a panda here at this stage?
Yes, sir. It looked like a Unix symbol.
So, but now once we have perceived it as a panda, so our brain will try to again and again say somewhere panda is hidden.
Yeah.
So I think the ratios also matter. Like if the figure is small enough, then we somehow fit in those lines. But if we see a very big picture, then it might be difficult for us to uh, fill in those contour lines.
Sure. Yeah. But then that's also about how I said when I started out the course that it's an interaction between the cognizer and the environment. Right? So if and a lot of what we are able to do is because of the way our bodies are. So if we are of a certain height, we can do as much. I mean, our visual systems are, and most visual systems, if they have a visual system, their agents' visual systems will be having a certain fixed ratio to the body. Some have bigger eyes because they need to do more visual processing compared to others. Like elephants and cows, for example, they also have a larger degree of vision. But yes, you're right that it kind of depends on overall how much we are able to say or how much we are able to see. But yeah, let's say that, well, we are now able to see it, and you're saying that because we're attending to the whole picture, we are we are somehow filling in these lines. That's a good first shot. um, the difficult question really is percepts of form, whether the form exists in the perceptual cognitive system, not the stimulus. So this is the major part, that the perception is not really in the stimulus. The perception is actually a cognitive function that is happening in your brain. And that's why you see a panda. It's not because of the stimuli or representation that is drawn, it is because of how perception is operating in your brain. And similarly, for the illusory contours. Now the question is this: what kind of theories can best explain this? And here, somebody already said that what happens when you force yourself to realize that they are not real? So this is another interesting question. So try to kind of force yourself to realize there is no line here. Can you stop seeing this as a panda if you try
Sir,
real hard?
sir, I wanted to ask, could this also be possible that when we see this, we see it like for example, if there is a real panda, his head top of his head would be pure white. There won't be a black line over his head. So we may be imagining it that there is no need for a line to separate its head from the rest. It's just that the background is white. That's why we are not able to see it. But if the background was yellow, the space above his head without needing a line would appear distinct.
Okay, so let's send to back. Make this larger. um, doesn't work now. So we basically need to fill this space up um, with a non-white color. But once you do that, it will not have an illusory contour. If you fill in yellow here and this remains white, then you will have a real contour. Only because it is white you have illusory, because you have to have the same color. No?
Maybe that's why we are trying to see it in that light.
Yeah, but if you fill the whole thing as yellow, I don't want to do it here. So if the whole slide is yellow, including the yellow essentially fills in this whole face also, it's a yellow panda for whatever reason, still we will be able to see it. It just needs to be of the same color to make it illusory.
Sir, it is because of the ears. If we hide the ears and try to see the line of the head, then the line will not be visible.
It is because of the what?
Of the ears. Of panda's ear. If we hide the ears and try to see the line of that head and the background, then it will not be visible.
No, that's true. No, what I'm trying to tell you is, if you try to force yourself to realize that there is no line, the line was illusory, can you stop, or can you end up telling yourself, okay, this is not a panda, this is something else? Is it possible to do it?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
Tell
sir,
me.
I think so. It is possible.
हेलो सर, लेकिन जैसे कि हमने तो मतलब पांडा या पांडा का फोटो कहीं ना कहीं देखा है, तो इस टाइप का अपना माइंड सेटअप बन गया है कि मतलब ऐसी पिक्चर आ रही तो लेटर सपोज ये पांडा ही होगा। लेकिन अगर कोई ऐसा व्यक्ति देखता है जिसने अपने जीवन में ना तो कोई पांडा देखा है और ना उसका कोई फोटो देखा है, तो वो तो मतलब इसके बारे में थिंक नहीं करेगा, देखते ही कि ये पांडा है। वो मे बी सोचे ये केवल काला धब्बा ही है जो अलग अलग जगह पर लगा हुआ है, या फिर कोई दूसरा होगा।
Exactly. Very right. In fact, that is why, again, to repeat while we end today's session, is perception is based on, the sensation which is coming between this black and white, the memory of things, which is what you are saying कि अगर कभी पांडा देखा ही नहीं है, तो obviously you don't have any memory of panda. Also about the stereotypes that we talked about for the dots, for the hearts, and many other things. But here currently we are forgetting everything else, and we're trying to make sense about how are we able to perceive something illusory if it is not there. Because it is very hard, and this is an interesting computational problem, because it's very hard for a computer to be able to perceive illusory contours, it seems so. In fact, you see, this is another great example of illusory contours, and most people not just see a triangle here, they also see this triangle superimposed on this triangle. So this also has a depth perception asset to it. So we have to now say, well, this is how I understand the form, and now in this form, this is illusory because there is no contour here. This is also illusory because now this part is superimposed on this circle and this triangle, but this might not be a triangle. Why can't it be just a fork here, a fork here, a fork here? There is no reason for us to conclude that this is a triangle below this. And there's also no reason for us to conclude that this is a triangle above this. However, a lot of people see this as a triangle which is put on top of the black triangle. Your job is to tell me why. What are the kinds of, and when I say why, no, not commonsensical, what are the kinds of, can we find properties of the mind or properties of perception that help us predict that we will see this as it is like an illusory contour? You don't have to tell me right now. Think about it, read about it, and we'll start from here from the next class. Because, well, we can hear some intuitive ideas right now for a couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, but read about it. This is a classic example of how we perceive forms. You also can Google up about programming subjective perception in a computer. There has been one recent attempt by a team at Google who is able to write now a neural network program that is able to understand illusory contours. All this time it was extremely hard for a computer to understand illusory contours, but for humans it's extremely easy. So there's clearly something that is there as properties of perception, which I will talk about in the next class, which explain why we are able to see these illusory contours, or why we are able to see this as a triangle, and we are also able to see this as a triangle, and likewise. All right, so let's hear some quick intuitive ideas, or if any of you by chance have already known or read this, then please feel free to share. But if you have not, please go back and read this and come.
Sir, I think this is related to some evolutionary aspect of our brain. So, because our brain evolutionary is evolved to seek patterns everywhere in the world. So, we even seek patterns in places where they may know there might not be any pattern at all, which is why we
Sure.
see illusions, etc. Our brain wants to make sense of something that we are seeing, and if the details are not sufficient to understand it in any simple way, then our brain, using its previous experience with the whole world and using our memories, it might try to match that thing with that. Definitely, it might force to match it with something which might not be exactly the same, but it will fill in the details on its own, so that it can make sense of it. So we want to make sense of things, and the brain can overcompensate by filling small details and making sense of it from our previous experience.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. Overall, it seems to be a job of the brain to find features or to identify features. You are very right in that. But think about it computationally. What does this mean? First of all, we need to have common rules or common operational principles so that we are able to understand features. So our first job is to list out what are the computational mechanisms through which we are able to pick a feature from the world. We want to make sense of the world using features that necessitates us to be able to pick a feature. Right? So first we have to do that. The second thing that we'll have to do is, if there are more than one ways in which we can pick features, is there a hierarchy of which is going to come first? If there's a contention between, both are operational, but which is the one that will eventually remain, so that I can say, well, this is a triangle and not, this is a pie.
So I think in this particular figure, there is also something unique, that all these shapes you see, circles with the cutout portions and the black triangle boundaries, these have been arranged in a very specific way. If they were randomly arranged at any random angle, then we might have seen them as the shape that we are seeing right now, that if we see them cut out in this way. But they're arranged in a way that if we just drew the line where it's not there, it might become a triangle, a perfect triangle.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why this picture has been a topic of a lot of debate and research and also modeling. But yeah, so these are the two things.
Sir, another important thing that I would like to point out is that in these angular shapes, when you see closely the ends of the angular shapes, you will see that they are sliced in the direction of the edge of the illusory triangle. They are not round or vertical or any other direction. They are very well positioned. Is someone speaking?
हार्पिक किसमें है? नीलगिरी दिखा. हार्पिक.
Guys, if you're not attending the class, you can leave.
नीलगिरी का है, इतना बता बस. ये क्यों आया साला?
Kushagra, could you please mute yourself?
It's not just muting. I'm sure a lot of people are not even attending the class. If it's the case, you can just leave. I mean, we don't need to crowd this thing up. Let people who are interested study. Those who are not interested go. Simple as that. I don't care. It's your choice. Right? So at least let other people have more time to this. Yeah. What were you saying?
Yes, sir. So I was saying that the edges, the ends of the angular shapes are exactly in the line of the illusory triangle. So we perceive that we tend to take that as a support in the fact that there should be a white triangle in between.
Yeah. So I mean, these are good, correct, to a large extent, intuitive ways to kind of explain by thinking about how this is metacognition, right? So you are thinking how probably we are making sense of this abstract or illusory triangle. But to be able to do it more systematically, we have to get to a set of perceptual principles that, if applicable, will be able to explain why we are seeing this, and not just this, it should also be able to explain other kinds of perceptions that we might have, including this figure. This is from where I will start. In the next class, I will also post a memo in Moodle, which you all have to answer. But this is not time bound, so you all basically have 2 days, 1 day really, to answer that. All right, and you can type it up in Moodle itself. So that's the simplest way to do it.
Sir, is this visual illusion on the account of visual sensory reception? Is the religious mindset of people like seeing things that are not there, or interference of someone superstitious being in the actions that are not being done by them and their love? Is it also illusion or something else? Perceptual recognition of a superficial being.
With respect to this figure, you mean? Or in general?
Sir, in general.
So there are hundreds of ways and very intricate and interesting ways in which perception works. So religion is another form of memory, right? So whatever is taught to you, whatever you read, whatever you hear is part of your memory. It has a different knowledge system, or it has different specific aspects associated with it, around it, which makes it a different topic, and we call it religion. Similarly, you can have a topic around science, you can have a topic about biology or geography or whatever. So I feel all of these different knowledge systems are essentially parts of our memory. Now, which part of memory will come or get activated when you are making sense of a perceptual form is very hard to say. But when it comes to these kinds of figures, irrespective of your memory or anybody's memory or any other more complicated individual learnings about that person, we are still most likely to see this as an illusory contour. Which means that there is some aspects of form perception that is independent of memory, individual memory. Now, you can argue that, well, you can still find people who have never seen a geometrical shape. That person might not see this as a triangle. Probably true. However, some people have argued, some philosophers have argued, that geometrical shapes are some things that we are born with. And most of them are symmetrical. Geometric shapes are also how the world is. Even mountains have a specific geometrical shape. Earth, planets, most celestial objects that we know about have certain geometric shapes. So geometry is something which is a truth of the world, and it seems that we have some intuitive understanding of geometry even. So even if somebody has not been taught what is a triangle, it might still be likely that that person does see this as an illusory form of a triangle. And those who have all seen triangles, they will all see this, most people will see this as a triangle, but it's illusory because it does not have the contour. That says that all of perception is not subjective. There's a lot of perception actually is going to happen for almost all people, which is foundational or core. Some part of perception will also be guided by previous memory, social upbringing, and n number of other potential aspects that will color the way you perceive things. So that's why I said perception is not just sensation. There's also aspects of memory and learning and this and that play a role. However, I'm also saying today that a lot of perception is based independent of other individual differences. And illusory contour is one such example, which is true across different cultures, different socioeconomics, different background, different religion, different this, that, everything. Does that answer what you're saying to some extent? Sorry, there was one more question somebody was saying. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Like, I wanted to ask, like, when I see this figure, I see the white triangle as a different color from the background. Like for me, whenever I see this, the white triangle is a bit lighter or darker shade than the background. And now, if we
How about this?
ask a person, still, when I perceive this, it still gives a bit, like, I think the brain feels it makes it a different color, like a bit darker or lighter than the background.
Mm-hmm.
And now, if we ask a person who has not seen anything in his life, like if we keep a baby, in a closed room of, say, yellow color, and he has not seen anything in his life, nothing except for those walls. If we show him or her this figure, will he still perceive it as one form, or will he start seeing it as different things, patches?
I don't know. That's the correct answer according to me. The reason being that, I mean, this is what you say is a classic philosophical thought experiment. For those who don't know, she's talking about the Mary's knowledge room argument, and you have put it very rightly that is knowledge or what our understanding innate, which means that if I have not perceived anything in my life like that and I see it for the first time, can I still make meaning out of it? And that's the philosophical question you pose. And my answer is I don't know, is because, you know, in this thought experiment, it goes like this, that if I have put this baby in a room which is of color yellow, and that baby first time walks out and um, puts the feet on grass which is green, can that baby perceive greenness of the grass? Because all this time from birth it has only been yellow. Now for color, the answer there's a large possibility that the answer is yes, because we do know now that color perception is essentially um, driven by the cells in your eyes. And unless there is something wrong in your eyes, it could be weak because you have been exposed to the same kind of color all through the time. So that might have caused some of your cells to attenuate. So, but you can pick it up. But when it comes to things which are not technically hardwired in our body, which is forms like this that you see, it's not quite clear whether the first time you see a form, if you have never seen any form, whether you will be able um, to make meaning out of that form. So that's why I said the correct answer is I do not know. But if you ask my hunch, I would believe yes. The reason being, the contrasts that will come from the black and white is going to be captured hardwiredly by the cells of your eyes, because this essentially is going to be light waves. And I have color information here, which is black and white, right? So the way it's going to work is that because I will have different kinds of wavelengths reflected, I would be able to perceive contours. Once I'm able to perceive contours, and the other reason I will be able to contours is that in our visual image processing area in our brain in V1, there are innate cells which code for edges. There is something called edge detection that happens automatically, in the sense that we are born with cells, biological cells, that help us detect edges. So if I am able to detect an edge, there is no reason why I would not be able to detect that there's a continuity between edges, which is why I will go to the theories in the next class that says that this is a common principle of perception, irrespective of any other assumptions about the person. If that's how perception works, then this baby who comes out and is able to do edge detection will also be able to perceive that there is continuity of this edge. And hence, this is part of the same whole. Similarly, there's continuity here. There's nothing that stops it. And this whole thing is part of one single thing, because there is no break in the edge if you do an edge detection algorithm, which is what our V1 cells in the brain are able to do very efficiently. Now, whether that person is going to able to perceive this as an illusory contour, for the same reasons I just mentioned, the answer is again and yes. But it's a hunch, and that's why I started out by saying I do not know.
Sir, what if like we are assuming that the baby is kept in a room with the edges, or is it like inbuilt that he will be able to differentiate edges? What
If
if
you
we
create
keep
a
him in a circular room where there is no concept of edge or corner?
well, there will still be edges, right? So if even when, I mean, it's hard not to have edges. So even when light falls on an object, the shadow is what is an edge. Now let's say we have a thought experiment where we maintain light so that there is no shadow, where we have a room which is a complete round, and the person, we don't expose the person to ever detect an edge. Now, if the edge detection cells in the brain are all die down simply because there is no work to do, which seems unlikely, extremely unlikely, then still that person will be able to detect an edge because you are born with that capability.
Sir, edges are all over our bodies. If
But
we
hunch,
see,
not.
so it's natural to observe edges because it's present from the birth.
I mean, that's what I said. I mean, it's extremely hard not to perceive edges. I mean, if you don't perceive, see, the whole reason why we have edge detection algorithm in our brain, or we have edge detection cells which are only do edge detection as the main thing that they do in our brain, is because it's so important to detect edges. Immediately after birth, the first thing to be able to make sense of the world is to detect where one object ends and where one object starts, which means that I have to detect an edge. So you can't really live without detecting edges.
Sir, has such an experiment ever been performed, like to understand whether our knowledge is innate or acquired from experience? Like, not, I mean, that an actual child was deliberately placed in a room for decades. Like, that would probably be illegal. But like, I've heard of some cases, exceptional cases, like maybe just one or two, in which the child was by their own parent, like socially isolated for a decade or so since birth, and like they were in a room only. Like, I think there was one child named Jenny, which is, I guess, a pseudonym. But so there was that case about her, which, and they later, when they discovered her, there was, I guess, some study by psychologists on her, and they found that she had no almost understanding of normal human behavior, and obviously no language as well. And I don't know exactly what they researched on that, but maybe there was something.
No, you are right. I mean, I don't. I think there are a lot of gaps in these case studies, but yes, the overall message that you say is right. But they observed, no language ability, or very rudimentary language ability, rudimentary communication ability, not even language ability, and obviously no social interaction. But then social interaction and language issues are there even in mental disorders like autism, for example. But what I'm trying to say is, if there is something which is hardwired in your brain, like edge detection or form detection or color detection, that should stay. I mean, it can be attenuated if you want to attenuate, but it will still be operational, irrespective of social interaction.
Just even I feel that there is some fundamental knowledge which must be innate, just evolutionary. I think it might be so.
It has to be. I mean, you can't. I mean, this is another thing where social cognition has taken it too far, and not everything is learned through social interactions. In fact, there's a lot of stuff which is not learned through social interactions. There's a lot of stuff that is genetically hard coded in genetics, in our genes. In fact, a great social scientist, actually, a social psychologist, did a lot of work to figure out how much of the knowledge is stored in genes across cultures, and it seems there's a lot. Right. So this, what is going to be the core of being able to deal with the world has been this large debate. But I think you should think of it, of how much of it is being supported by the biology itself, which means our genetic markup and our evolutionary trained cells which are now specialized to do certain kinds of stuff all through our body. No, nobody has to learn how to digest, for example, through social interactions. Social interactions can have an effect on digestion, yes, but the knowledge of digestion is innate. Similarly, the knowledge of understanding colors is innate. Social interaction can affect what I make sense out of a meaning of a color. So the association of pink with girls is a stereotype bias that comes through social interaction. But the ability to perceive pink as pink is not through social interaction, because that is what is driven by the cells in your eyes, right? So get this kind of balanced view about perception. I hope I'm trying to give, which is a lot of the stuff happens at the sensory level. A lot of perception happens innately or hard coded in the brain or the eyes or other parts of the body. And there are specific principles of perception which we have not talked about, but those principles are important because they are the ones that says, well, this is how perception is going to operate across almost all people. However, the story should not end there, because many a times in real life, or even in here, in sample stimuli, it is indeed also affected or moderated by our previous memory and learning and society and education and all kinds of other potential ways, including stereotypes and prejudices, which is what our examples from the heart and the illusory contour and the pilots in Air Force, in World War II, and simple things like facial recognition is trying to tell you, to paint a more realistic story about form and visual perception. Is this a good summary? And can you get to what we are at? All right.
Yes,
so,
sir.
yes. So you have to read some stuff up about these illusory contours, because we'll start out from there and then we'll proceed to the principles of perception, because that's important to know. Is there any more question, or should we stop?
So here, because the white triangle is placed in front, it is affecting our perception. But suppose we
It's not in front.
keep it.
That's the fun of it, right? It's not in front. There is nothing. There's one. This is one 2D picture.
The way we perceive it is like it is kept in front. That is why the circles are cut, because it is above.
No, that is the explanation that is remaining to be coming up. We have to come up with. No, why do we perceive this first of all as a triangle? Second, a triangle which is closer to us, or keeping on the top, as you put it. What's the explanation for that? The cognitive explanation or the psychological explanation that we have not yet arrived at, but we have to.
No, my doubt was like, what if we have that black triangle above, or we make those lines visible of that black triangle, and then we remove two of these circles.
Mm-hmm.
Then we won't be able to perceive it as a single figure with two triangles and a circle, right?
Yeah. So what you will do is you will fill up this line and this line and this line, and you will erase these lines.
No, I will erase those circles.
Oh, you will erase. Oh, yes, of course. The circles is what creates the illusory contour. Yes. Otherwise, everything will be white. No,
I'll keep one circle as it is, which gives.
Which one?
The bottom one.
Okay, so we keep this circle, we remove these, and we also, how do you move the black one on top?
We just fill in these lines, which completes the the triangle.
But this white still remains at the back, or you just fill in the lines?
The white remains at the back. The white is in the middle, then the circle is lowest, the bottom circle, and the black triangle is on the top.
Yeah, but if you fill in the lines, then this circle goes. Sorry, this triangle goes.
But we might be able to perceive it with the circle, right? Because the circle
only this one, right? So this is okay. So let's. I have never tried this, but this is an interesting experiment. This is, well, not good, but something like this.
Not exactly. Like I have made a figure, but I'm not
Okay,
able to see that how
that's
others
that's
will
fine.
perceive it. And
Yeah, that's fine. We can start out from there. So just remind me to start from you. We can, put this up on the slide. You can, send a message to me. I'll just put it up and we'll start out from there. But most importantly, I want you all to read a little bit and try to explain this. I can do it, but it'll be nice to do that little bit of homework. But yeah, I mean, this is also very interesting. Who is this? Purvi, is it?
yes, sir.
Yeah, Purvi. About what are the different